Since 1976. This is my husband over here, Jorge. And we met on January 18th, 1976. And on January 20th, 1976, we were getting married.
Wow!
And it was, you know, we all know it won't last, but here we are, right, Jorge? And then, coincidentally, 9 years later, on that very day, the 18th of January, 9 years later, 1985, my daughter Maggie was born. So that's kind of a special day for us. And of course, you can imagine it was very different back then. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. They say, talk about what you know, read, write, and do everything about what you know, but I hope that you'll be interested in it. So for better or worse, how Merida has changed in the past 5 decades. Uh-oh. Problem already. Scott? Do you think it goes this way? Okay, I moved to Merida in 1976, met Jorge, and we began a new life. And obviously we have changed over the past 5 decades, and so has the city. And if you're wondering why I'm talking and the words are there, these are subtitles for people who, you know, can't hear that well. At, you know, this age, that happens. Yeah.
You haven't changed a bit.
Thank you. Well, anyway, one of the things that is really changed in Merida is the shopping. When I first came to Merida, really the only place to shop was at the Lucas de Galvez market in, you know, right up at the end of 56th Street there. And I used to go with my mother-in-law, and we'd march up there with our big empty bags, and by the time we'd finished getting everything, we couldn't carry them back, so we used to take a little horse-drawn taxi, known as a calesa, that you pay like 500 pesos now to take a tour around. Yeah. Well, that was our main taxi. And there was a lovely young man there, Manuelito, and my mother-in-law always took him a big, huge sandwich. And he would come and find us and put our bags into the thing, and he always used to even ask if we wanted him to come too, and he would unload them, but we figured we could do that. So anyway, this was the already prepared meals section at the market in those days. Oh, sorry. And this is it nowadays. You can see the comida yucateca featured there at the market. The market now has fast food as well. So that's a huge change. I can remember in the 80s when the free trade agreement was first in its conversation stages, one of the things that we were kind of excited about was we were going to get some more restaurants and choices of what we could eat, because in those days there was a policy of hecho en Mexico, which meant everything was made in Mexico. You could not buy foreign-made goods except in the duty-free zones. Whoops. Okay, so the duty-free zones were a little ways away, all the way to Cancun, and getting to Cancun was not the highway that it is now. It was through every single town and hamlet that was on the way to this place, or down to Chetumal, where you could get more goods. The whole state of Quintana Roo was a duty-free zone. So they had an enterprising bunch of men and women who would bring goods to a school that has been closed, the Felipe Carrillo Puerto School, and they started the San Benito Market, which we knew as Chetumalito, because that's where you could get all the goods from Chetumalito. And another advantage of Chetumalito was there was parking. Lots and lots of parking, which is something you just don't see here anymore. And this was, well, this is 1999, so this is skipping ahead a little bit, but it looked like that. And then in 1981, the first mall opened. I got some ladies at the back there going, I remember that, I remember that. And we were so excited. This was the Plaza Oriente. It's out on the, you know, where the road to Cancun starts. If you come along 59th Street, that's where it is. And the Plaza Oriente had a big grocery store plus a lot of other little stores. But, you know, the shopping carts, there was a sort of a section in the front designed for purses, but we had a baby. So my sister and I used to like put the baby in there, Carlos, and his little feet through the front, and then she'd go running down the aisle and get big rolls of toilet paper, you know, packages of toilet. We put one on either side of him, and that was the baby seat. Not quite up to code, but it worked. And the interior of Plaza Oriente, it was pretty unique. I mean, they had everything. Cars were in there, and model homes. They had everything. It was just like the market, except it was called a plaza. And it had air conditioning too. That was another big thing. And now we have La Isla and the Alta Brisa, and we have Galerías, and we have the harbor. We have all kinds of other malls. So in less than 50 years, we've gone from the one option being the market to these, you know, fairly modern malls. I have friends that come from Canada and say, oh, this is really nice. This is nicer than what we have. Anyway, I think they're trying to flatter me, but they're nice. It is a nice mall. Lots of entertainment there, which is a new concept in malls as well here. And then about this time, there were also a lot of buildings being torn down. The INA had not yet put in a lot of the restrictions that they have now about preserving the architecture. So this building, although this is a picture from 1920, it was torn down to build the Elefante Blanco. It was called the Elefante Blanco, the white elephant. Nobody knew what it was for. Some people said it was going to be a hotel. Some people said it was going to be a place for tourists and to watch shows and that, but it really didn't have the shape or form for anything. So it was just called the Elefante Blanco. It was a real eyesore. They finally had to tear it down when a piece of it fell off on a person and ended their days. Imagine, how were you killed by an Elefante Blanco? So in its place, they built the Congreso. This is the state legislative assembly. And it lasted for long enough until the legislators had figured out how to get more legislators in on the dole. And so it got to be too small, and they built one on the outskirts of town. So the Congreso was razed, and the Palacio de Música took its place. This is a building that was, you know, there was a competition to who was going to build this building. And if I remember correctly, hi, there's two chairs here. Susie and Carlos, there's two chairs here. They're part of my props. Anyway, this group from Monterrey was the group that built it. And they positioned different buildings and everything supposedly where there were underground water deposits and things. So the acoustics are supposed to be pretty good. It's right on 59 and 58. Okay. Well, right across the street from it is this. Now that is Fantasias Miguel. And Fantasias Miguel is a place where you can buy any kind of decorative item. Back in the day, you were lucky to find plastic plates in a color except white. And, you know, so for children's parties and stuff, I remember we used to draw little dots around the rim of the plates and so on. And at Christmas time, I brought one thing to show you. At Christmas time, we had these. This was the Christmas decoration. It still works. I still have 9 of them. banks, I thought it would, hecho in Mexico was pretty well made.
Yeah.
But anyway, for people who enjoy making things and arts and so on and so forth, decorating for parties, Fantasias Miguel was a great addition to Merida. There's another one in the north too. Oops, I did that again. Okay, and then there was Banamex, a bank that was established in Merida in this building on the corner of 56 and 59. It was established in the late 1800s, very elegant Porfiriano building, and it was torn down. We got Banamex, yeah. And my parents-in-law lived just down the street from there, and the bank had a parking lot where we had a parking space, and there was a special little door that you could go through there to get into your parking place.
So this building replaced the other building?
This building replaced the other building. It was maybe the early 70s that this building was built. Now, of course, that beautiful building was in real disrepair. You know, a lot of the plaster work and things like that were not kept up. So, I mean, many of you have bought a house that has had those characteristics. So, you know, I guess that's another thing that's really improved are the building materials and the paint and all of those kind of things for doing restoration. Now, during the 1980s, this was a common sight. We still had a lot of these horse-drawn delivery vehicles. This particular one was, I think, Carbon, but they had all kinds of different drinks like tepache, and they had, golly, wood, dirt. Many things were delivered this way. Even though, you know, we had a proper avenue and everything, billboards announcing Coca-Cola. This was still very common. That's the thing, like with change in Merida, it has come sort of gradually. You know, they kind of phase things out little by little, and something else has been on its way in. But when this one finally, maybe the final horse gave up his last breath, and the government at that point said, okay, no more horse-drawn buggies, and we will have just the regular ones. So that's kind of how it's happened in Merida. Almost surreptitiously, change has kind of come to the city. And this is Avenida at its size now, you know, from the 2010s on. It's a busy street. They've made lots of attempts at improving the circulation, and they have been successful. But it's still, the main streets, the main arteries are very clogged. They need a stent, those guys. Okay. Okay, and also the downtown traffic is really congested now, especially the parking situation. I mean, I can remember when there was no parking on two sides of the street. Now you've got people that think they can have parking on two sides of the street and a motorcycle. And, you know, I shudder to think what they're going to get to next. But it really, the driving around, back in the day, when I first came here, it wasn't easy, but that was because people would drive down the street, see someone they knew, throw on the brakes, get out, say hello, and you're there. And if you politely honk the horn, like maybe we could move now, you get the look. You just had to sit there and be patient. Whoops, did it again. Okay, but we've had a lot of restoration. This is a street, that's the Hotel del Gobernador. It was also built right around the time, not too long after I got here. And, you know, these buildings are beautiful. They're back to what, probably better than what they looked like when they were first built. Paseo Montejo in the 70s was a very quiet street all through the week. But on Sundays was the family day, but it's also the day that all the young men and women came out and, you know, got a good look at each other. And the boys would drive their cars around, and the girls, there were chaperones still when I came here. And they'd stand there with the little sister or the mother or the aunt or somebody, and the girls would watch the boys go by, and the boys would come back and surreptitiously passing little notes and things. But it was quite something.
Can you guess what is behind that monument there?
Oh, wait a minute, we'll go back.
Huh? What would there be?
No sé.
Fiesta Americana Hotel.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Now this was the Club Deportivo Bancarios. It was the sports club for the Bankers Association. So all their families, and they would go to this place, and if you have a good look at it, it is the lower part of the Fiesta Americana Hotel. I watched that hotel be built because I drove my children to a school in Itzimna from Garcia Jimenez. So I watched it go up block by block. And it was quite an engineering feat, I'll tell you, because it's a big building. There it is. So you see the beginning, the bottom, the lower building. It was Sanborns for a long time. Oh, we were excited about that. And there was a Vips across the street. And my friends and I used to go there a lot. My husband and I, my kids, yeah, we liked Sanborns. Oh, I'm going to do it again, I bet. Oops, did it again. And, you know, the mansions, the Paseo de Montejo was designed after the Champs-Élysées in Paris. So it was, you know, a mini Champs. And they had beautiful mansions all along. Most of them, I think, Jorge, would you say by the 80s they had stopped tearing them down? They weren't allowed to tear them down anymore, but a fair number, you know, met the wrecking ball, that's right. So this is
the hotels like the Paseo de Montejo, the Montejo Palace,
the Conquistador.
insurance companies.
Yeah, so lots of things were destroyed in the name of modernity. And then this is the Paseo de Montejo with its bicycle lane. It's a very controversial bicycle lane if you're a motorist. Yeah, it's very confusing. Okay? Well, you know, you get to this particular place, you're coming along here, you've got traffic coming in 7 directions, and you can go in 5, and you're watching for bicycles frantically. Anyway. Now, as we talk about, it wasn't just in Merida that has changed a lot. All the towns and things around have changed a lot, and who would this be? Wait a minute, I know I have a special thing here that I can do this with. Whoa! I better not get bold here. This handsome man is my husband, and those are his brothers on the road to Progreso in about 1958. They had a lot of fun. Yeah, there was a train. The trains in Yucatan, of course, now there are new trains being built through the country. There's a lot of controversy surrounding them. But, you know, for massive transportation of goods, people, anything, the train, if they can keep it economical, it's a good deal. And the boys sure loved it. Whoops, again. Okay, and this is another, the bane of my existence, the periférico. I really will drive 20 kilometers out of my way to avoid going on this road. I live too long with like congestion, but slow congestion. This fast, wide open spaces, it's quite frightening because people don't have any, there's a line painted there, but that's just your imagination. I put it on the screen. And this was Progreso. Progreso was full of coconut trees. You didn't have to have little palapas and things because there were so many coconut trees. You just, you know, kind of looking like where there were ripe coconuts, you wouldn't go really, but you know, it was really beautiful. And the water, look at it. It was before Isla Cervera was built and the deep water terminal. So there was much more flow of water. See, this was designed during the war, right, Jorge?
Yes.
And during World War II, so this was still old technology, and they believed in things like making arches so that the water could go through. And Progreso was really beautiful. The beach was fantastic. Now, this is what it looks like now when it's, Yeah, and look at the color of the water. Well, the water does change according to the season, but because of the, you know, sort of the mussing up by the sand and the storms and this. So this would be at Easter time. It's right after the winter when you've had all the nortes and things are a little bit, but yeah, lots and lots of people.
What happened to the palm trees?
The palm trees all died after the 1988 hurricane. Gilberto, it was 88, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Because a blight came in with the winds and it got into the coconut trees. They had no resistance and most of them died. They made valiant attempts to save them, but most of them, the big Jamaica palms, they all died. And so they got a variety from the Philippines that was more resistant, and that's what we have now. They're not nearly as tall as the ones we had. So they don't give the shade.
I thought the hurricane.
Not hit them. No, it was the blight. Some of them were turned over by the hurricane, but mostly it was the blight. And it took, again, a number of years. You just, you know, you sort of didn't notice that they were all disappearing, and then all of a sudden there weren't any more. And Progreso in the day was full of these iconic homes. This one is called El Pastel. Why do you think? Looks like a wedding cake. And now, I don't know if everybody knows this, but this is being restored and it's going to be operated by the Trotters, Bryans, Trato. They're going to be operating this restaurant in Progreso. So that's going to be a really nice addition.
This is at the end of the way.
At the end of the Malecon, yes. Yeah. Yes, it is.
I'm so glad they're restoring it.
Can you just tell me what time? Somebody tell me what time we're at? Okay. All right, and then there was the way people dressed. There was none of this grunge look. No, everybody really dressed up to go on the plane. I think we all remember that, but here it was really something special. Jorge would go to pick up groups of tourists from Europe and they'd have furs on and high heels, and they'd use those any day that they could stand it. They'd use the heat, you know. Nobody who comes here for the first time has any idea what the heat is like. And then you go back and you tell people, oh, it was hot, and they'll say, well, like how hot? You go, well, really hot. And even when it's not really hot, it's really humid. So we have a sheen on us all the time. And this is dressed out for going out at night. They have wonderful fashions, and the young people are so beautiful. We used to be younger people that were beautiful too, but you know. Anyway, we weren't allowed to wear things like that. First of all, it was the era of women's lib, and you weren't going to be, you know, doing that kind of thing. And none of this provocative stuff, according to our parents either. This is my friend Mary Lou from grade 1. We went through school with the nuns. What do you think Sister Mary John would have thought of that outfit?
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, that's great.
And then another thing that has always been there, but really not a lot of people appreciated, the haciendas. They were in ruins. Some of them are just fantastic. And, you know, they were architectural marvels. Like, look at this arch. It's just fantastic. And then, you know, it had to all be restored. And all of the haciendas, but many of them have been restored, and many of them are now entertainment venues for, you know, congresses, weddings, very wealthy people's birthday parties, you know, things like that. But they're just beautiful. I'm really happy to see that they have been restored, because even if the, you know, some of the history of them is not wonderful, there they are, and, you know, I think they need to be showcased. And then there were the archaeological sites. You could drive into the archaeological sites if you wanted to. You were supposed to stay in the parking lot, but if you wanted, you could go in there and just park the vehicle right there, wherever you wanted. There were even cows in there sometimes. This is Chichen Itza, you know, one of the marvels of the modern world. And that's Carlos. Carlos, my husband Jorge, and Eduardo, we're all guides here. Now, a lot of people think that guides are just, you know, people who are out there to get your money and they roar you around the ruins for 2 hours and give you a crazy story. The guides I ever knew were very, very well educated. They knew their topic very well. Oh, I better hurry up. And you okay there? There's a little space. I'll give you a few minutes to sort of settle in. Yeah, you can come in here if you want to stand in here. Yeah.
You're the one standing for
I should have had a picture of Queen Elizabeth's visit. She came the year before I came, and when the rain came, she sat right where she was in the quadrangle of the nunnery, and her lady-in-waiting held an umbrella over her. So there we go. There's somebody doing that down there. Okay. And now this is the new entrance to Chichen Itza, built in the 1980s. Now, of course, it has all the services. Bathrooms were a great addition. The old ones they had really left a lot to be desired. But, you know, you lose something too. I mean, seeing a Volkswagen or a cow in the middle of the ruins is kind of fun, and handsome men lying on top of the Kukulkan. And then, of course, Cancun was on the way in 1976. This is one of the first hotels to be built. Is it the Viva, I think, or the Presidente? Yeah, Presidente, yeah. And now, of course, this is what we've got. Wall-to-wall, chock-a-block hotels by 2020. And this was the ferry from Punta Sam to Isla Mujeres. And I can remember coming back on it one time after we'd been for a weekend on Isla Mujeres, and I was just lying, and the water was full of phosphorescence. And the stars above and the phosphorescence below, it was really magical. Beautiful, beautiful.
And there is our blue Volkswagen.
Yeah, and this is the new boats to Cozumel and Isla Mujeres. They're fast boats. But you know, there was something really cool about, you know, the rocking old ferry coming back. You couldn't take it in a bad storm, of course. These ones just zooped right through. And one thing that, you know, still is very, very much a thing are the fiestas and the pueblos. They're beautiful. Try sometime to go to one, you know. The people don't mind you watching as long as you're respectful. And it's really something to see. And of course, if you don't want to go to the pueblos, we have a very vibrant club scene. Some of you probably have one right behind your house. And these are the thatched homes. This is the the Maya Casa, Chosa. And this design is the same as it was 3,000 years ago. So the Maya definitely knew what they were doing. And we hope that close family ties will remain strong in Yucatan. You have a lot of intergenerational relationships, and people really, they love their grandparents, and you know, they cherish those relationships. And they learn from the older people. And the older people, you know, get out their phone and say, "Can you fix this, please?" So there's back and forth. And the cenotes, when I first came here, nobody went to the cenotes. They were really dirty, and you know, just kind of, you know, they got water to water the fields and things. But when they cleaned them up and found out what was there, and they were such a tourist attraction, most of the cenotes that are accessible have been turned into tourism attractions, and they're beautiful. And rain on a hot, humid day is always welcome, sort of. Not night, not when you're out, but anyway. So I kind of like this picture. And look at that. That's from '76. The kids used to cover up the drains so that the water would get even deeper, and then they'd swim. Huh? Homemade swimming pools, yeah. And see how the water would go into the house? Mom loved it. Yeah. My kids did not have that privilege. It was denied them. But they used to stand under the, you know, the water that comes off the roof, the drum pit, and stand there. Maggie was so little, she'd be it's funny. And these boys, they still have as much fun together as they did in that train. This is Jorge and his brothers.
That's cute.
Yeah. At Raul's birthday party. And in Merida, one of the things that's so spectacular almost every night of the sun sets. Buenas noches, Merida. But that I've talked about, you know, the infrastructure, I've talked about, you know, things like that. But a few more points to ponder. When did you visit Merida for the first time, and what time of year was it? What did you like about the city, and did you ever imagine you would live here? Today, I thought it would be interesting for you to hear from a few other people that have lived here for the same amount of time or longer than me. And these are my cohorts back here. There's Joe and Kathy and Mary. And we've all lived here a long time. We all met a handsome young man and fell in love and stayed here. And it wasn't like it is now. We did not even find each other for months, sometimes years. When I moved here, I didn't meet another native English-speaking person for 16 months. So, you know, Jorge's friends, Jorge had a friend whose wife was from Belize, and she'd come over and talk to me, and that was welcome, but she wasn't of my culture. And, you know, there were just so many things I wanted to ask, but there was no bar or English library or International Women's Club or Thursday men's breakfast club that we could go to. We had to really immerse ourselves in the culture, and it wasn't a bad thing because we really learned the culture. We learned Spanish. We didn't have to take classes, really. We just had to sort of try and talk to the lady who was helping you in the house. And I was so thrilled to have this lady who helped me in the house. That was one of the biggest perks. I learned to talk to her. And she would say things like, "Tú vas al mercado y tú compras tomate." It sounded to me like you go to the market and you buy tomatoes. And I went, "You want me to go to the market and buy tomatoes?" Okay. But it was just her way of talking. She didn't use the proper pronoun. She meant I went to the market and I bought tomatoes, and then I gathered, oh, and she wants to make that fresh salsa, great, you know. So, you know, we had to work things out for ourselves. And then one happy day in one of those first supermarkets that would now be an OXXO, more or less, I met Lynn, and man, she didn't have very much time, and I wrote a book about this, and I said I wanted to hang on to her ankles and not let her leave. And through Lynn, I met Diane, and through Diane, I met Joe. I met Kathy, she's my neighbor. Mary started working here. So little by little, we formed our group of friends, and then people who came through the years were added. Valerie, Linda, all of these other people became part of our circle. So we didn't have any ready-made, just like there was no ready-made quiche to buy or salsa or anything. There were no ready-made friends either. You had to, ooh, there's a bug. An ant.
We have still bugs in
They still have bugs here too. Yeah, the bugs were a challenge in the beginning because, you know, they had this stuff. It was DDT. It came in a great big bottle, and you screwed on a kind of a sprayer thing. Looked like an agricultural thing, and you went, and these clouds came up, and I thought to myself, if they're killing those mosquitoes, what are they going to do to us? You know, that much of it. But that was that, and there were a lot of things that, you know, a lot of things that were one way where we came from, but another way when we got here. So I ask you, what time of year was it when you first came to Canada? What did you like about the city, and did you ever imagine that you would live here? Anybody want to talk about that? Yes, Kat.
I came here in December, and it was 1978. And I got to walk up the stairs at Chichen Itza when we parked our car at the bottom. That was so fun, and I loved the city, and I wanted to come back and see the solstice sometime. And so it took me 34 years, but I came back and saw the solstice, and I thought I might live here because I'd been to 29 other states in Mexico, and I loved it. Instantly. And that's it. You drink the water from the well, like the book you wrote.
There's a saying here that if you drink water from the well, you'll always come back to Yucatan, and I think there's some truth in that.
I think so. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Someone else? Well, maybe I could introduce another couple of people. Okay, yes, Allison.
Cliff and I came here very soon after Kat in January 1979
On
our honeymoon. And we did climb Chichen Itza as well. We went to Mexico City, Merida, and Cozumel, but we never imagined ever living here. And it was 25 years before we came back.
Wow.
Great.
moved.
Yes.
We were living in Lococo, and we were looking for an alternative because Lococo has very poor health care. And my husband developed some heart problems. So we bought a house here after being here, we looked twice, and that was 2010.
Okay.
And that was 2008. And we bought a house here, but it took us 12 years to sell the house in Lococo, and we finally arrived here last year this time.
Okay, very good. Well, you were perseverant, Jackie.
Yeah, I moved here in 1964.
Uh-huh.
When I was a student at the Tecnologia Turistica Total. And I was coming with my friends from school. We were going to meet some kids. And so we passed through Merida. And I said, one day I will go back here to live. But at that time, Cancun did not exist as a city.
No.
There was nothing there.
No, nothing.
So I finally got here.
Yeah, Jackie, you know, lived in the States and that, but she made this trip to Mexico. And her friend said, oh, you can go to university here. We have universities. So she did. She went and studied chemical engineering, biochemical engineering at the Tec de Monterrey. And she had the textbook in English and the textbook in Spanish. And she got through with blazing honors, as I remember you telling me. So si se puede. You can do it.
Yeah, learn Spanish or flunk.
It was learn Spanish or flunk. That's right. Anybody else? What about some of you people who are, you know, younger than most of us here? Why did you come to Merida? Any of you?
We are just tourists.
You're just
we are
tourists?
Just here for a few days.
Okay.
Right.
And how do you like the city?
I like it very much.
Yeah, very good. Be careful. Don't drink any of that agua de pozo. Yes.
I just moved here a month ago. I decided early in the year that I wanted to move. I'm in education in Texas, and all of my years in education, 15 years, have been working with mostly either Black or Mexican students and families. So I've always wanted to learn Spanish, and now that I work from home, I thought, why not, you know, live your life on your own terms? So my main goal really is to learn Spanish. So necesito practicar mi español, but I've only been here a month officially today, so.
Very good. Well, welcome. Now, I would like to introduce two people who are here tonight that have been our very good friends, Carlos and Susana. They also were guides with Jorge and Eduardo, and who else was here? Yes. And Carlos has always had a great kind of party personality, and he always managed to find lots of fun things to do. And Susie, you know, we've just been like sisters. We both worked for an airline at one point. She spent a lot of time flying to Montreal from Mexico City. I spent a lot of time flying to Mexican destinations, although not the East Coast, because there wasn't that much going on touristically. I actually came to Merida via Cuba, because our airline had just started up holiday trips to Cuba, to Havana and Varadero. And so the Mexican National Tourist Council invited us to come here too. And oh, what a difference from being in Cuba. There was food here. Because there we had rice and beans, beans and rice, ham hocks. And they hadn't quite, you know, I mean, bless their hearts, but there was just not a lot of food available in Cuba. And for Canadian tourists, that was the second trip I brought here. I made everybody go to the store on the way, and we bought crackers and little cheese things, and just to kind of tide them over. But anyway, so I think that about rounds it up. I think it's just about 8 o'clock. And I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight in the rain. That's very, very nice of you. And a message from my sponsor here. Greg Cassini is the president of the Merida English Library, and we are having a benefit for the musicians on the 14th of December. So, you know, if you are free on the 14th of December and you want to go to a beautiful place and hear lovely music and have some nice wine and some lovely hors d'oeuvres provided by Vogel Feast, it's the place to go. I think you might just happen to have a ticket or two if you want to get it right now. And if not, you can get them here at the library another day or elsewhere. There's lots of places where they're for sale. So, muchas gracias. Thank you for coming.